708-889-5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good Thursday morning. Amy Jacobson here. Oh, my God. Charles Thomas. I almost called you
That's
John
me.
Anthony Charles Thomas is joining us today. Dan will be back. He's just on vacation today, and then tomorrow is a company holiday. But we'll be here tomorrow. You won't be. Justin won't be. Quinn won't be. But I'll be here, and Jim Urio is going to be filling in. So any financial questions you have, write them down and be sure to call in tomorrow, too, for
Because you
that.
got them covered.
And then
right?
we have a surprise guest from the 8 to 9 o'clock hour. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. But now all eyes are still on Kilmar Abrigo Garcia. Senator Van Hollen went down to visit him to try and get him released from prison. Tried to meet with the president of El Salvador. Denied. He couldn't even see him in prison. And what did you say? He vows to stay down there until...
Yeah, I heard he saying, I'm not coming back unless I come back with Kilmar. Good luck.
I mean, for this senator, could he be more out of touch? This guy's not even, they call him a Maryland man to Maryland father. Not an American citizen. He's from El Salvador, and he's an MS-13 gangbanger terrorist. But that didn't stop Van Hollen.
This is about due process. This is about rule of law. What bullies do is they begin by picking on the most vulnerable. I just landed at the airport in San Salvador a little while ago.
For you.
I'm now en route into the city. The goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abrigo Garcia. I won't stop trying, and I can assure the president, the vice president, that I may be the first United States senator to visit El Salvador on this issue, but there will be more, and there will be more members of Congress coming.
Oh, yeah, please, Democrats, please keep going to El Salvador to try and get into that prison. I beg you. Senator Cory Booker is on it, said he's going to go, as well as other congressional members to go save this thug who, by the way, that we learned yesterday, allegedly beat his wife not once, but twice. In 2021, she filed domestic violence protective order against him, claiming that he punched her, scratched her. Another incident, he allegedly ripped off her shirt and began beating her. He didn't even come through a port of entry because he was a gotaway, because he knew that he was not, if he went through a port of entry, they'd deport him because he's a lengthy record in El Salvador, not in here, but they say that he's an MS-13 terrorist, and that's why they want him gone. With more on this, let's welcome to the program Virginia Allen, senior news producer for the Daily Signal and the host of the Daily Signal podcast and the Problematic Woman podcast. Ooh, I think I might want to tune into that one, too. Good morning, Virginia. How are you?
I am well. Good morning. Great to be with you.
I love the name Virginia. My sister's name is Virginia, and I have a grandma Jenny as well. So do they call you Ginny or Virginia?
A few people call me Jen, but, I live in the state of Virginia, and so most commonly now people call me VA because my last name's Allen, so those are my initials. So it works.
Oh, that's so funny. Good for you. Well, let's talk about this thug terrorist that's dirtbag who this Maryland senator is trying so hard to get back in the country. What has a judge decided?
Well, the court cases, they're ongoing. Judges are looking at this, and we see this kind of back and forth in the court system. But the Trump administration has been very clear, and the government of El Salvador has been very clear. Neither the U.S. government or the government of El Salvador has any interest in this individual being set free, being released, because, like you've referenced, he does have a criminal record. This is someone that entered the U.S. illegally back in 2012 and then proceeded to essentially take various actions and to be arrested. We see from handwritten filing, court complaint, domestic violence complaint that his wife filed that you mentioned, the very last line she writes in this is, "I have multiple photos and videos of how violent he can be and all the bruises he's left on me." This is an individual that was arrested in 2019, standing around with a known MS-13 gang member wearing what is essentially the uniform of MS-13.
Which is the black Bulls hat, right?
That's right. Is that Bulls hat. And so this is someone that, of course, we don't want in our country. El Salvador doesn't want on the streets of their country. And right now, because he was deported to El Salvador, the U.S., we can certainly ask, we can certainly say, hey, we would like this individual to be brought back to the United States, but ultimately he is in the custody of El Salvador, and the president of El Salvador has said, yeah, we're not very interested in releasing a violent gang member, so no.
Well, I read in the Tennessee Star that he was pulled over and he had 7 people in his car, and they believe he was human trafficking those people, but they called ICE, and ICE said, no, just let him go. We're not going to come and get him.
Well, and this is the crazy part of so many of these policies that we saw under the Biden administration, even going back to Obama, that there was just really this failure to comply with U.S. immigration law. And because of that, ICE officials, their hands were tied, Border Patrol, their hands were tied time and time again to where they couldn't carry out simple procedures and practices like arresting someone on suspected charges of human trafficking. We saw this at the border under the entire Biden administration. The Border Patrol agents were so maxed out that they were processing so many cases and claims that they couldn't actually be physically on the border to stop illegal aliens. So I think this case is the perfect example of what happens when an administration really decides, multiple administrations, really decide that they are not going to enforce our immigration law. And finally, the Trump administration, what they're doing is not radical. What the Trump administration is doing is saying, hey, novel idea, we're actually going to follow the laws that are on the books when it comes to immigration. And then you have individuals like Senator Van Hollen who seem deeply offended by this, but simply
a domestic restraining order against him. She's liking this because, Charles, what is the GoFundMe for the Kilmar Abrego Garcia family up to?
Well, I'm looking. Earlier this morning, I saw $208,000 had been raised. I'm still trying to get an update because this is, as you know, a hot story.
Yeah, it's a fluid situation. I mean, I'm sure it's going to go up. But the fact she's not going to call him out because there's money in it for her, right?
Yep. Well, sure. And I mean, I'm kind of questioning, if she essentially is a little bit of a pawn in a way in this situation. We don't know the full story of how that relationship since, she filed those claims of domestic violence back in, a few years ago. It's a little unclear what their relationship has looked like since then. Has he continued to be violent and a threat to her safety and their children's safety? But it's like both things can't be true. She's been standing up and saying, I'm missing my husband. I want him back. He needs to come home. But then at the same time, she wanted a restraining order against him a few years ago. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there. And, right now we see that a judge has ordered Trump officials to testify about their efforts to try and bring this man back and what they're doing in order to bring him back. But again, the Trump administration has made very clear they have no interest in it. It's only individuals like Senator Van Hollen who seem very, very interested in raising this case more highly into the public view. And meanwhile, it's such a slap in the face to individuals like the Morin family, Rachel Morin,
right.
a murdered Maryland mother. And when you have this focus from Democrats so really targeted on Abrego Garcia and really trying to make it this sob story that it isn't, and yet really ignoring a case of an innocent mother in Maryland who was murdered in cold blood by an illegal alien from El Salvador as well, who was found guilty by a jury this week. It took that jury less than an hour to determine, yep, he's guilty. There was DNA evidence that really made it clear. Yep, this illegal alien.
They're
killed
both
before he
MS-13
raped her.
gang members.
Yeah, both gang members.
Isn't one of the bottom lines here that this sends a message to anyone who might want to enter the United States illegally, and it's a message to those who are here already illegally that, wow, I mean, some horrible things can happen to you if you break our laws.
Well, and that is, I think, what's so critical about what Trump is doing. You think about who Trump is. He is, I've called him this many times, but he is kind of a master of marketing. And so what the Trump administration is doing right now, not only on the legal side of actually enforcing immigration laws, but these actions of deporting illegal aliens, of in some ways making an example of Abrigo Garcia, is to say, if you dare to enter our country illegally, to break our laws, to be a gang member living illegally in our country, this could be the result. This could be what happens. And the direct result of that kind of clear messaging is exactly.
No way I would want to end up in an El Salvadorian prison.
Man.
What's that place called?
CECOT.
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 That is a prison of all prisons.
Can you imagine if you're a Venezuelan gang person?
Oh, yeah.
And you get sent there.
So sad, too bad.
And you're sitting there with MS-13 and you're Trin de Agua, or what do they call it?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Maybe they separate them.
Maybe they do. I don't know, but it all just looks like. If I saw that, I would never even try. I wouldn't even look at the United States. I would be like, nope, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm not going to try and become an asylum seeker. But Trump is working on a plan to self-deport. So if you want to leave the country, you can get back on the list to enter legally. They'll facilitate your plane ticket out of here, or by bus or by train, and maybe give you a little stipend. That's kind of what Sweden's doing. They're paying families to leave anywhere of up to $40,000 to $50,000 for a family of four. Oh, they want them out of there.
Wow.
That little experiment they did in the suburb of Stockholm, not really working. There was, I don't know if you saw it, Charles, but there was a reporter who went in there to talk to people, and she got attacked, like physically attacked, because they own that. I mean, it was crazy.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You should look that up. So,
but $40,000, I mean, you might find a lot of Americans will leave.
Oh. Yeah, can we get on that list? All right, one thing we want to talk to you about, because it seems to, with all this news and, stupid thugs we're talking about, the hostages that are still being held in Gaza.
Yep.
And one is American Eden Alexander. He's the last living American hostage. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep. 21 years old.
And tell us about the video that was released.
Really troubling. This is the second propaganda hostage video that's been released of Eden Alexander. And he looks rougher in this one, certainly, than he did in the last one. His family is, of course, relieved to see that he's alive. But he's really pleading for his life in this video. He speaks directly to President Trump and pleads for his release, for his freedom. He is very critical of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And, we also know that he's in all likelihood being forced to say the things that he's saying. He doesn't have a choice. He's been held now hostage for 560 days, I believe, marks today, almost 560 days, been living in tunnels underground. He's 21 years old. He was serving in the IDF on October 7th when he was taken, grew up in New Jersey, and his parents live in New Jersey, and just really tragic. This week, Holy Week, Easter week, remember to pray for him, pray for his family, pray for his freedom.
Yeah. But Eden Alexander, I did not know that. See, now, why don't we know this? Why doesn't the mainstream media do a story on Eden Alexander if he grew up in New Jersey? I did not know that.
Yep, that's a great question. This is a really brave young man who, after he graduated high school, decided of his own volition he was going to take a little time, go back to his homeland, go back to visit Israel, and was so kind of moved by that experience that then he decided, I want to serve in the country that my family is originally from, and chose to join the IDF that morning, on the morning of October 7th. As soon as that attack started, he was in contact with his mom. He told her, I'm okay. And then shortly thereafter, his mom was not able to to reach him. And his parents, I've had the privilege of speaking with both of them. They are beautiful people.
Really?
And they're lovely, lovely people. And they're very clear, this isn't a political thing for them. They just want their son back. More than anything, they just want their son home. And, his mom says it's going to be a very, very, of course, emotional moment when he is finally set free and she can wrap her arms around him and hug him and tell him that she loves him. And he is one of 23 hostages that is still believed to be alive and in Gaza.
And how many bodies are they still holding on to?
So there's about 35 bodies that are still being held, including several American bodies.
Oh, gosh. I mean, this is just, never did you think when this started that it would be this long.
Yeah.
And it's still not resolved. And I don't know what more President Trump can do. Do you have any suggestions for him?
I think you really have to be incredibly aggressive, and Trump has been. And gosh, from even before Trump took office, him saying there will be hell to pay if the hostages aren't released. Well, that brought Hamas to the table to finally agree to a deal that resulted in the release of 33 hostages. But I think that really increased pressure needs to be ramped up. Because right now negotiations are moving back and forth, and Hamas presented a deal saying, okay, we'll release 5 of the hostages. Israel came back and said, no, you need to release at least 11. So it's this ping-ponging back and forth right now, and they haven't been able to reach an agreement. But in the meantime, these families are just in tremendous pain. And anytime I have spoken to either former hostages or family members of hostages, they say it's not that these, we don't have time is really their undergirding message. We don't have time. Every day, any day, these hostages could be killed, could die because of the conditions they're living in. A deal has to go through now for their release.
I want you to hear this because Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes, I don't know if you heard this, she interviewed a survivor, an American Israeli who was held hostage and deprived of food and water and beaten. And listen to her line of questioning.
The terrorists became very mean and very cruel and violent.
More so.
Much more so. They were beating me and starving me.
Do you think they starved you or they just didn't have food?
No, I think they starved me, and they would often eat in front of me and not offer me food.
I mean, when I heard that, it was as if she was defending Hamas, saying, well, they didn't get food because they didn't give you food because they didn't have food. How disrespectful is that?
It's insane. And this is why, ratings among left-wing media outlets is plummeting because people they see right through it. The American people see right through these kinds of questions, the agenda that's being pushed. And let's be very clear. Hamas is a terrorist organization. They have brutally killed and murdered hundreds of thousands of Israelis, and they can no longer have any ability to rule. And I mean, that's been incredibly clear since the beginning of this conflict. Benjamin Netanyahu has said, hey, our mission here is to completely dismantle Hamas because if we don't, another October 7th will happen.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Virginia Allen, always a pleasure. You can follow her on X at Virginia_Allen, ALLEN, the number 5. That's Virginia_Allen 5. You can read her articles in thedailysignal.com. Virginia, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile. Gain insight into building strong marriages and raising godly children with Focus on the Family with Jim Daly each weekday at 11:30 a.m. on our sister station, AM 1160. Hope for your life.
This year, Holy Week is the same week for Christians and Jews. Passover commemorates the great exodus of the Jews from Egypt. For Christians, Holy Week begins on Palm Sunday, April 13th, when Jesus rode a donkey into Jerusalem and crowds waved palm branches and cheered Hosanna, loosely, a praise of save now. Just 4 days later, on Holy Thursday, Jesus and his disciples took part in their last Passover together. This Last Supper is when Jesus was betrayed and falsely convicted. The next day, Good Friday, Jesus was hung on the cross and died. John 1:29, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. But wait, the story doesn't end here. Jesus was buried in a tomb, and on the third day, he rose from the dead. That's what Easter and the Christian faith is all about. Read Isaiah 53 and John's full account of his good news, a read that will change your life forever. Fox Valley Coins will be closed on April 18th in remembrance